I hate long intros, so I'm going to go over this really quick. This list isn't necessary to reflect adaptations, but more movies that are based on video games. The word adaptation, it suggests a likeness, and that doesn't really factor in to this list because all these movies are just based on video games, but may or may not necessarily, but may or may not just be their own thing. So let's get to the list. I know I might lose a little bit of credibility right off the bat, but don't worry guys, I know what I'm talking about. Super Mario Bros., the movie, is a good movie. It might stem from the fact that I'm a big fan of the absurd, but if you just try to ignore the fact that the movie has anything to do with Mario and Luigi, you might have a little bit of fun. It begs the question though, how did he get from this to this?
My instincts tell me this will be faster. Come on, breathe in, big brother. We'll get there. Luigi!
Or from this to this. It's beyond me, and it probably does warrant a little bit of explanation. The Super Mario Bros. Movie is just straight up fucking insane. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean, the plot is about a meteorite that hits Earth, therefore creating a parallel universe where dinosaurs rule the world. Who comes up with that? Well, a real adaptation of the Mario video game, like ones that we all would imagine would be really good, it would never really live up to our expectations. This movie went a totally different direction and just did whatever the hell it wanted, which is kind of cool. Is it a bad movie by a traditional sense? I think so. I think most people would say it's pretty bad, but there's just something about it that I think most people can appreciate, and that's why I put it on the list. Based partially on my favorite game of all time, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children isn't a great movie, but it's pretty damn good fan service. First off, the movie looks fantastic. It's a gorgeous rendition of a world that so many of us fanboys have thought and dreamed about since we were little kids. My biggest problem with the movie, though, I'm not totally sure that the battle scenes work. The action is a bit weird in the sense that it seems to exist somewhere between a typical anime and a Western action movie. I suppose it all works as well as you could hope for. The movie is also very Japanese, and of course as it should be, but it might be a bit of a shock to someone who isn't really tuned into those type of characters. But other than that, Advent Children is a great way to see all of your favorite characters fully realized in a movie. It also gives you one more chance to rub one out to Tifa for old time's sake. The Silent Hill game series is one of the scariest in all of gaming, only beaten out by Resident Evil, Eternal Darkness, Dead Space, and a couple other great games. Silent Hill proved something important in regards to horror games, that you could have fairly shitty graphics, but the fear was in the atmosphere and the execution. Just listen to the ambient noise and music. Moreover, the movie got a film adaptation which really isn't too bad. The story is nonsense, which kind of fits the game, but what makes the movie really work is the visuals. It isn't the fright fest that everyone expected, but it does follow the game closer than almost any other film game adaptation, and for that, I applaud the movie. I was never really a big fan of anything in the Prince of Persia universe until the video game Sands of Time came out. I was obsessed with this game, and when Prince of Persia came out a few years later, everyone loved it, but for me, Sands of Time was really where the fun was at. However, the movie I really don't mind that much. Sure, it isn't like the poor-core platforming movie that all of us fans of the game would have wanted, but it still has a lot of comedy and action to satisfy both fans and newbies. It even incorporates the Sands of Time's brief time traveling into the movies, which in the game you saved yourself from death by turning back time a few seconds, and in the movie it's very similar and actually kind of cool if you played the video game before. All in all, it's a pretty decent package. While it isn't a movie to save video game adaptations, I still think it works pretty well and deserves some credit. Dead Space reinvented the horror survival genre, bringing the genre to a whole new generation of gamers. The first Dead Space is in my top 10 games of all time. This game proved what sort of artistic possibilities were coming in the future of games. Most people are unfamiliar with the spiritual sequel for Dead Space called Dead Space Extraction. This was a Wii exclusive and was less well received than the almost universal acclaim of the first Dead Space. An animated DVD called Dead Space Downfall was released that takes place during the same period of time that Extraction does, and it proves to be a really gory, really fun little adventure. While not as scary as I would have hoped, it really takes the whole Dead Space Extraction to a new where you can watch the movie after the game or vice versa. I'm disappointed that more game companies don't do this. I know a few games do have DVDs that come out that run parallel to the actual video games, but this one kind of seems above and beyond for some reason. Mortal Kombat brought pixelated violence, gore, and mayhem to living rooms across the globe, infuriating parents and getting people's panties in a twist over whether or not such extreme violence should be allowed in video games. More importantly, this hit when Mortal Kombat was peaking in popularity. We couldn't wait, and then it happened. PG-13? What? Mortal Kombat the movie was going to be based on one of the goriest games ever made, and it was going to be PG-13? It didn't make any sense. My brother, my cousin, and me were fucking outraged. We wanted heads to roll. Just seeing Sub-Zero and Scorpion in live action was actually pretty cool. Liu Kang takes center stage, which is kind of stupid, and there are no fatalities or anything to speak of, but the movie has some kick-ass fights and sports one of the great movie soundtracks of the 90s. Who doesn't associate the music of the movie to the actual game Mortal Kombat, which is kind of weird. The Mortal Kombat movie was actually my first introduction to techno/house/trance music, and it actually introduced me to that genre, and I actually kind of fell in love with it through the movie, and I've been in love with that type of music ever since. So in a way, the movie's kind of influential on me in a kind of weird way. And how amazing is it when Cage punches Goro in the balls? This might be controversial because the Tomb Raider movie was never really well received by critics or the game community overall. And I don't really have a reason for why I like it or, anything to really defend myself with. I mean, maybe I could use the excuse like the slow motion shots where Jolie's tits are like slowly bouncing up and down, but even then, I don't think that's good enough. Even I kind of disliked the movie when it was first released, but then I sat down and really thought about it, and Angelina's, a pretty damn good Lara Croft. Though the plot of the movie and set design are pretty generic, the filmmakers were able to bring familiar elements of the video game into the movie with varying degrees of success. For instance, the obstacle course in the movie is directly influenced by the training tutorial at the beginning of Tomb Raider 2. I mean, it's not groundbreaking stuff, but it's still kind of cool if you're familiar with the game. One thing that never wore off on me about the video games either is they're so fucking hard. They're so hard. I'm sure if I went back and tried to beat them, I'd be easy because I was really, really young when the first two came out, but still, goddamn. I mean, I'm scarred today even watching, small little clips of Tomb Raider 1 and 2. Like the boat part, I can't do any of that. And in the end, there was really not much to the Tomb Raider games, and they were very hands-on in exploration and, going in crypts and caves and stuff like that. And I actually just think the first movie is just a fun little action movie, and it's as harmless as it is entertaining. Other than that, I don't really know why I like, the Tomb Raider movies so much. Maybe it's just me. Okay, I'm going to keep this really, really short for reasons that will become clear in a second. I love Resident Evil Apocalypse. The movie is lovably pointless, has awesome action, and is shameless in its blending of genres. Rarely do movies get to be so careless with their execution, and that ability comes from being based on a successful series of video games. I said this one would be short, but just hold on a second and you'll realize why. This is almost number one, and it was really hard for me to justify why it doesn't get the top spot. Street Fighter is a great movie. The video game Street Fighter 2 is one of the best games ever made, and I loved it. I loved it. I played it all the time with my dad until we could beat the game on its hardest setting without even breaking a sweat. My opinion of fighting games has never been the same since. I can't play all the new fighting games like Marvel vs. Capcom or whatever like that. I just can't. The control and combos have never felt right to me. Street Fighter 2 just fucking nailed it in my eyes. It was the first time I found ways to play a fighting game without just mashing, button mashing, blah, blah, blah. Instead, it was a tactical, strategic approach to my opponents, where I would set up one move just to get to the next move, which would lead me to my next move, and where special moves had a certain purpose. For example, you'd throw a sonic boom and the guy would jump over it and you'd answer with an uppercut. Now, this all sounds really, really basic to most people, but when you look back and look at fighting games before that, it was nothing compared to that. It's amazing what Street Fighter 2 did for the genre. Now how did Street Fighter 2 get to this ridiculous movie? I'm not sure. And when I was young, I used to play Guile, so when Street Fighter 2 was released and I found out Jean-Claude motherfucking Damm, a motherfucking badass, was playing Guile, I was excited, to say the least. And the movie delivered. It really did. All the characters are ridiculous. The fights are spectacular and corny. And Raul Julia is great in his role as M. Bison. My favorite scene is obviously where Zangief and E. Honda go at the little miniature city, that utopian city that Bison has set up. And it's, not mocking, but paying homage to all the Godzilla movies. And the movie is really silly and really deserved to be. And what was it going to be serious? I know it's bad form to put two works from the same series on a best of list, but I love me some Resident Evil. And what's weird is I hated this movie when it came out. Like, I wouldn't even give it the time of day. But as the years passed and I was able to lick my wounds a little bit about it, I started to understand this movie wasn't a video game adaptation per se, but more Paul W. Anderson was just trying to have fun and channel the spirit of video games into movies that he thought gamers would like. And was he successful? I really think so. If you set aside all those nights of looking over your shoulder after you turned off the Resident Evil, or if you forget how scared you were when those rabid fucking dogs jumped through the windows, you should be able to get into this movie a lot, and it really has a lot of fun to offer. I know it is hard, believe me, I was furious. I kept on asking, what the fuck does all this have to do with a bunch of, people in a mansion getting attacked by zombies? But some of the original story is still there, to be fair. And Anderson was just looking to make a crazy action zombie science fiction movie thing. And that's okay. What so many gamers have problems with is when directors take, our beloved games and mess with them. We feel that they've messed with the original material, like adapting our favorite book, or, adapting our favorite manga or anime, or, whatever we're into. But video games aren't like those mediums. They're really not. Taking a story and adapting it to the screen directly can sometimes just not work when it comes to a video game, because video games are they're interactive. Everyone has a different experience, and often it's better to play towards an audience and just try to do something entertaining that they think that audience would like. And to do it properly, there has to be the right game and the right time to properly adapt it into a movie in the traditional sense that most people would want out of something like that. And I don't think it would work for most games. I think a couple of games it might work for is the recent Heavy Rain game, and maybe the Uncharted series that David O. Russell is attached to. I don't know. I still don't know if that's going to work. And I think those would work because there's already great characters and storylines already in place. And with something like Resident Evil, it could have been fun to see this scary stuff on screen and have it be like a traditional George Romero, because famously, George Romero was attached to it and they didn't like what he wanted to do. And it would be fun to have that traditional type of thing going, but I almost feel like it would mess with how scary and great the original game really is. And I think it was a better option to take the plot and just go crazy with it. And I always find it funny because I did this list because I don't think video game movies have their masterpiece yet. I don't think, one of the big directors, not Scorsese, but maybe like Robert Rodriguez step forward and try to make a really decent adaptation of a video game. I don't think it really probably will ever happen. And until that day comes, I think these really are the best genre has to offer. I'm Colin Gilbert, and thanks for listening.